have black pearl. I'm still a big supporter of that. You may know it's named after my grandmother, Pearl Hill. I formed Pearl Resources, and then we found a great management team, John Festival, to run it. And I think they're doing a bang-up job. Heavy oil is a bit tough right now. We need a couple of pipelines, one down to the Gulf of Mexico and one going over to China before those barrels will be worth what they should be worth. But in the meantime, John Festival and the boys are doing a great job bringing these projects on. Shamaran has been probably our biggest struggle over the last few years, my personal biggest struggle. You may remember it from its incarnation of Bayou Bend, which we went looking for gas in the Gulf of Mexico and didn't do so well, and then we turned it into a Kurdistan story, and we struggled along on that for quite a while. We went to Kurdistan thinking geological risk was almost zero. It was political risk was the only issue. What we found was the geology was much tougher than we thought. We took 2 of our 4 blocks and basically handed them back to the government because they weren't prospective from a technical basis. Some of you checking your Blackberries might see that we've just made a press release today on Shamaran. The second well that we drilled in the Truce just tested at 42,500 barrels a day, which I believe is the record for a well in Kurdistan. So I think we do have one very good asset, the Atrush field. We just sold the Taza exploration block so that we can concentrate our time and resources on that. So as with the Lundin Group, we always stay with our companies, and we stay with our shareholders. And I can tell you, I think I own 3 million shares at a cost basis of $1.20. We're trading now at about 30 cents, so you can be sure that I'm focused on this one as well, and we're in the same boat. But I think, you know, what I want to say on this topic is there is risk in all of these plays, and the Lundins have made a very good living off risk versus reward. There still is a lot of risk in the Africa oil portfolio. I think we de-risked that one small Lokichar sub-basin, but there still is a lot of risk in the plays that are about to drill. But as far as, you know, having worked in every one of these, I've never seen a risk-reward profile as good as what I've seen in Africa oil right now. So there's still a lot of work to do. We've only drilled one well, really, so it's early days, but it's incredibly encouraging what we've seen so far. I do want to spend a little time on community development and social investment. I think this is something that we spend a great deal of time and energy on, not just because we're good human beings, but because we're good businessmen as well. Very happy to see that the 2 journalists were released from Ethiopia. Despite their motivations, it was good to see both governments cooperating and setting them free. I do take exception to a lot of things that we see in the Swedish press about the Lundin family and what they've done over the years. I've been with the Lundin family for 15 years. I was 2 years in Sudan. I've been in Ethiopia, and I can tell you all of the operations I've been involved in, I'm very proud of the record we've done in human rights and in the community relations. And we do it just because, not just because we're good people, but it is that you need a social license to operate if you're going to develop resources in the third world. The days of people coming in and just taking resources and leaving with them are long gone, and good for that. You know, we need to work with our stakeholders, we need to engage them. They have to see a benefit for us being there. And if they see a benefit for us being there and they want us to be there, security is never an issue. You know, all the places we work, which are difficult places, I can go into Somalia, I can go into Ogaden, I can go into Sudan. All the people we directly deal with really want us to be there. And the reason they want us to be there is they see benefit in the short term from the projects we've been doing, in the medium term from employment, from training that we give them, and in the long term from bringing oil and prosperity into the country. So again, I'm quite proud of our record here in Ethiopia and Kenya. All other oil companies were advised to come see Africa Oil and use their CSR model as the model for oil companies to do work going forward. I like to throw this little picture in here. This is the Swedish ambassador actually awarding a plaque to us for our efforts in the Ogaden Basin. So I guess my point would be don't believe everything you read. So to sum up, I think this is an unprecedented position we've got in East Africa. So we've got by far the best onshore acreage position. We've got in the hottest exploration play in the world. So I think we're quite fortunate that we got in early, we got all of this good ground, and kind of East Africa caught up around us. So the Gambia discovery has opened up a whole new oil basin, and this basin has the potential to be the size of a mini North Sea. Again, it's very early days, and we have to drill a lot more wells, and that's really what our focus is. Go out and drill wells. We're going to drill at least 10 to 12 high-impact wells over the next 16 months, and by then we'll have a pretty good idea of what we expect to see down there. But the goal is really to evaluate the new plays and new basins, really, as opposed to just trying to appraise our discovery and book reserves. We want to see how big this thing is before we start doing any development planning and how big it could be. If it is that entire trend coming true, it's probably too big for even for Tullow. We'll probably need to get help from a much bigger company to come in and develop a play this size. But I'm so enthusiastic about this. I'm actually, on this Saturday, I'm moving to Nairobi. So my wife and I have rented a house. I've sold my house in Vancouver, packed up all my worldly belongings. I told my wife, it's like when Cortez came to the New World, he burned his ships so that the crew knew there would be no going back. So I'm really looking forward to it myself. I think this is going to be a chance of a lifetime. I think not only is it going to be personally rewarding, but hopefully it's going to be rewarding for the company and for the country as well. That'll be my main job down there, is to try to work with the government on issues like transparency, sharing with the local communities, developing community relationships, and keeping our licenses intact. We don't want to see any changes in our fiscal terms. The government has been very clear about that sharing of their revenues is being discussed with the local people, but our revenues and our PSCs in the draft energy legislation are sacrosanct. So I'd like to be there in the front row to kind of watch after our interests as well as have a good time. We did bring a couple more people. I'll just close. We just hired a new COO who's a very experienced guy that I work with Talisman in Malaysia. We really needed some help kind of on the early development, drilling, production, operations side. We were very fortunate to get Nick to join us. We've also hired a VP of External Relations, Alex Budden. He will be looking after our community relationships, our media relationship, government relations. He was the political officer in Nairobi for 3 years, so very well connected in the NGO community, the government community, the local communities. So I think he's going to be a big help to us as well. And then I would let you go and talk with Robert after this, and he'll explain in detail why everything I just told you can't be believed. All right, so thanks very much. I think we have time for some questions if anyone has them. So if you want to just raise your hand, we'll bring the microphone around to anyone.
Can you say something about the trading program in Puntland by that company or petroleum? Are you going on drilling there and when?
Trading program?
No,
drilling. Okay.
Drilling.
Yes. The first thing we need to do is shoot some seismic in the Doror block. We don't really have a drillable prospect that doesn't look just like the one we just drilled. So again, going back to, we don't want to repeat our mistakes. The only prospect that we have that we call the drillable prospect, Prospect B, looks just like the ones we just drilled. It's kind of in the same area. We do have some prospects that kind of look like that string of pearls up against the big basin bounding fault. We've got one nice four-way dip close incline that just needs another line to see if it closes to the west. So I think that's our first task in the northern block in Darur, is to go out and probably about $20 million worth of seismic to outline new drillable prospects. But we have committed to drill another well in the Doror block and gone into the next phase. The next phase has a $5 million commitment and the drilling of one well in each block. In the Nogal block, as I said, we've got all the prospects we need. We just need to work with the locals to get access to those. There are some border disputes between some of the local members there. And what I'd like to do is, like we did in Malaysia, sit down with all parties, do a cooperation area where without prejudice to border claims. We all just agree that we'll work together and explore it to the benefit of all. Next.
Thank you for the presentation. It seems like it's a very good, both economically and socially, a very good investment. I was wondering if you could say something about the environmental aspects. For example, how will you make sure that you will not destroy any areas with very high conservation value? I mean, with very high biodiversity, for example.
That's a very good point. We are working in some very sensitive areas, particularly up in the Omo block and around Lake Turkana. So one of the things that's going to be very challenging is trying to drill in some of these offshore prospects. You know, the last thing we want is any type of incident, a BP type of incident in those lakes. So we are not going to be drilling out in the water for the foreseeable future until we can get technology that we feel 100% containment and 100% safety out there. We also have, there's not a lot of the Kenyan, you know, the wildlife like the Masai Mara. There's not a lot of that type of wildlife up where we are, but there is a very big bird population and biodiversity up, particularly in the Omo Delta, that we're going to have to be very conscious of. So we are working with the local NGOs to see what we can do to mitigate that. The other thing is we are in the Leakey Foundation area. This is basically one of the birthplaces of civilization. It's a World Heritage Site where some of you might know Lucy, the first hominid, was found. So we have 2 archaeologists that we work with on the seismic crews. They come with us and they go walk ahead of us on every line to make sure that there's no sites that are going to be disturbed. We've actually found 52 sites to date, and we take our seismic lines and we move around them, and then we help with the marking and the for excavation of those sites. So we want to be a very good stakeholder here. We want to work. We want to work with all the stakeholders to make sure that we cause the minimum amount of damage and deliver the maximum amount of good in there. It is a challenge for countries that are non-oil producing countries to become oil producing countries. We believe strongly that oil should be a blessing, not a curse. You know, we hold up the Norway model on one side. You know, that's the people we want to be, and that's what we'd like the countries we're working in, where there's transparency, where we take the oil money, it's very open to what the money is being paid in, what money is going to be spent for, and that it's for the benefit of the people, not just in the central government, but that there's allocations for the local people. You know, the challenge from a cultural standpoint is trying to improve people's lives and their way of living and their health and education standards while still preserving their culture. And I think that's something you know, we're all going to have to work on to try to accomplish that. I think the other thing is expectations. I think if you stop most people in the street in Kenya right now and ask them when oil is going to be produced, they would probably say sometime later this week or early next week. And it's going to be 3 to 5 years at least. That's if everything's going well before we get a pipeline built and we produce oil. So what we need to do is work with them to see that they don't have to wait for that long-term benefit. There's a lot of medium-term benefits. In the medium term, we're going to be doing a lot of construction work. We're going to be doing a lot of infrastructure development. We're going to be doing a lot of training, as well as our ongoing CSR programs. So I think that's my main job when I go down to Nairobi. Talo's the operator. They'll be hopefully doing most of the operational stuff. My job is to make sure that Africa Oil is represented and that we do things in a very straightforward, social, environmental, conscious manner. Thanks.
Hi, Keith. Nice to meet you. Do you have any comments on the extremely good results from Shamaran announced today? Just announced.
Any comments on the Shamaran announcement?